Hi, hello, how's everybody doing today? Hopefully today finds you well. Today we're doing the next review in my palette roulette series in which I choose a palette or two, or in this case, 3 palettes from my collection. Palettes that might also be in your collection. It's not about the brand newest thing on the market here on my channel. We utilize it for a week. I come back to you, I talk to you about my experiences with the palette, show you some pictures of the looks I was able to create with the palette, and live swatches, and then we turn around, pick a new palette, and we do it all over again. Today we're actually reviewing 3 palettes, so I'm gonna try and do this as quickly as possible. And the fact of the matter is today is Tuesday and this video goes up on Wednesday, so I need to get this done. So I'm going to try and do it in as few takes and with as few necessary edits as possible. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, please keep on watching. For those of you new here, hi, my name is Donna. I'm a lover of all things high-end, colorful beauty and self-care. I also work in the beauty industry at Ulta Beauty as a field leader, and I get a lot of education in my position, and I'd like to bring you that education on this channel. I do things like reviews and all the regular beauty YouTube content creation that you see out there everywhere else. But truth of the matter is I really just like to talk about makeup. If you like to talk about makeup, you're in the right place. I hope that you will find that this is the appropriate place for you to be, that you'll want to subscribe before you go. And with that said, let's jump into this review. All right, folks, today we are reviewing 3 palettes, as I said in the intro. Sorry about the lighting. It's kind of funky. Today is the end of the day. The light over yonder is shining brightly. I think that you can probably see a little bit of it like shining off of me at some point in the video. I'm hoping that I have done some real due diligence in correcting the lighting a little bit so it doesn't happen all over the place, but I think you can see it in my background here. I'm trying here. If the lighting goes a little bit shifty, know that we're working with it. We're trying to get this done. This is the Reina Rebalde 4-Play Wet Dry Quad in the title Oaxaca. This is a $23 quad with 5-star review on the Reina Rebalde website with 5 reviews. There's 0.14 ounces of product in this palette, or 0.035 ounces per pan. And this is what the palette looks like. It's got a beautiful, like, queen, like almost Rosie the Riveter feel to it. And the back of it just says the information about the palette, and then you open up the inside, and this is what the inside looks like. It does have a really decent sized mirror for a quad, and it is all blue eyeshadows. This is cruelty free, but talc is the first ingredient in its formula. So if that's not something that you like in your products, know to steer clear of this. This is a Latina owned brand, and it is made in the USA, and Reina Rebalde means Rebel Queen, which I think is fantastic. I love that name for a brand. I just think it's very cool. There is no shelf life on the back of this, and I didn't really see one either on the website, so I can't tell you what the shelf life of this is, but I do know that this has been in my collection for quite some time, and it actually performed quite well. I was very pleased with it. It blends really, really well and is super pigmented, including this navy blue here. Very, very pigmented, and I have a whole lot of problems with it. There is no patchiness with this palette, which I, again, was shocked by because these are all blues, and blues tend to be patchy no matter whose formula they're in. There was also no voiding, so I thought that that was amazing, and kudos to the owner, who, P.S., was a very affluent attorney and quit her day job to start a makeup line. She did a really, really good job. She launched the makeup line in 2016 and has been doing it ever since. So it's apparently lived through COVID and it's doing quite well. The website for the brand is still up and running, and I mean, it appears that she's doing really well. What I would say is I do think it's a tad bit overpriced. As I said, this was $23, and there's a range of different products to choose from within this line. I have had multiple different products from Reina Rebalde, and many of them, if not all of them, have found themselves decluttered out of my collection, except for this quad. When it comes down to it, I will probably keep this quad because it is very small and because these blues perform as well as they do. I had a really good time with this quad and with the blues within it. The wear time on this, however, is only about 6 hours, and I need something that really holds on just a little bit longer than that. I do like my makeup not to be a hot mess at the end of the day, and this only lasted about 6 hours before I saw significant fading and maybe even movement of the shadows on my eye. This is a very dry formula, and with that, it lends to exacerbation of any kind of texture that you kind of have on your eyes if you try to pack on too much color to get what you want out of the shade. Most prevalent in these two lighter shades here. I saw it more with those. This one I did try to put on my lid, and this one I did try and put on my lid at one point in time and opted to take the whole makeup look off because I just felt that they exacerbated texture just a little bit more than I wanted them to. This one I really loved in my brow bone. I also loved it as an inner corner shadow. This one worked very well in those instances as well, and I actually used this one to blend out these two shadows quite often. This is not a bad quad, and I will, like I said, keep it in my collection if for no other reason but because that deep dark midnight blue really does work very, very well. But the shadows are very, very dry. So there is no name on these shadows, so I'm gonna go like around the palette like this when I swatch it. So starting here and ending here. So this one is the first one. I would say that this is kind of a white gold almost. It does have kind of like almost a dingy gold like underlying tone to it. Then we have this one here, which they have described as a periwinkle. I think that this is much more like cornflower blue or more of a denim blue color. Then we have this one here, which is a navy blue. And then we have this one here, which they have categorized as a lavender. That pinky swatch is awful. More as a lavender. I would say that, yeah, it's a little bit of a lavender. It's also a little bit of almost a light periwinkle, in my humble opinion. It is kind of, in my eye look today, blended out across the top, but you really can't tell. So that is the Reina Rebalde Oaxaca quad, and I really did enjoy it, and I really will be holding on to it. I think it's a good palette. The next palette is this one. It is the Goss Luxury Eye Palette in Imperial Topaz. This palette is a $55 palette with 4 stars on Beautylish, 198 reviews. It does have 0.57 ounces product in it, or 0.095 ounces per pan, so more than double of what was in the last palette. And it does have 6 shades, and this is what they look like. The inside of the palette does have a mirror, and the shades look like this. You guys can see these are very neutral shades, definitely not up my alley, but there are 4 different palettes for you to choose from the Goss Luxury Eye Palette range. Each one of them has 6 shades. Satins, mattes, and metallics are amongst the mixed of formulas in there, and each one of them has a different like composition of how many you're going to get to, you know, the others. This one has 3 satins, 2 mattes, and 1 shimmer, supposedly. But that shimmer is definitely a glitter. This is a staple neutral palette. Each one of the shades in this palette has such a beautiful silky texture. If nothing else, I will say that this palette's shadows feel so good to the touch. Like, better than I think I've felt from any other eyeshadow formula in my life, to be honest. They blend so beautifully, almost not even trying to blend. You could have a blended eyeshadow. They go on beautifully. They just like become one with your skin. Like, I cannot say enough good things about the whole process of putting on these eyeshadows. Also, what I really loved is, like, I think that you can see, like, this palette was hardly at all dipped into, or at least that's the way it appears. But I used this palette every single day, if for no other reason but for this black. And I think that you can see that there's like just a little smidge of a spot in the black that looks to be touched. They are just a little dabble do you. This will last you for 100 years. If this was the only palette that you had, you wouldn't need another one unless you wanted it for a color story or whatever the case is. This will last you for a long time. And again, these shadow pans are 0.095 ounces each. So that's a lot of shadow. That's even bigger than a Natasha Denona large size eyeshadow pan, which is at 0.08 ounces per pan. So these blend so beautifully. Like I said, there's zero patchiness, zero skipping, zero voiding. There's none of that. They play well with each other. They play well with other shadows. Like, there's nothing really bad that I can say about this palette whatsoever. This black, like I said, is beautiful and it is pigmented, but it's not so pigmented that if you just dip your brush in and go onto your eye right away that you're going to regret your life. There is none of that with this black, but it's not black, if that makes any sense. Like, I had a really good time using this black, which is a first, actually. I don't typically enjoy using black because I always go overboard with them, and I felt like it was almost impossible to go overboard with this black, not because it wasn't pigmented, but because it just went where I needed it to go. It was like magic. It just went where I needed it to go and was the appropriate pigmentation where I needed it to be. I don't know how to explain it. What I will say is that I really wish that at least one of these satin shades in here, so this, and this are satins, and I really just wish that one of these two had been another matte in this palette, because I did not find that this palette had enough mattes for me, because these satins do not work very well as a matte. They're way too sheeny to be in your eye look as anything other than a satin. The other thing that I hated about this palette, and every single one of the palettes in this collection has one of these, and I am, you know, a rare breed. I don't 100% love glitter, is this. This is not a shimmer that is a shimmer. It's a shimmer that has a lot of glitter and a lot of fallout. I found that it fell out all over my face, and each one of the quads has a shimmer like this in it. So that is really the only drawback for me, is in a 6-pan eyeshadow palette, there's already automatically one of those pans of shadow that I would not use. And for $55 and 6 pans of eyeshadow, I want to be able to use all 6 pans. I would have even loved for these to be maybe smaller pans and there to be a whole nother row of 3 in here, and gotten a little bit more color choice for these, but I definitely understand why he does it this way, and I get it. But at the same time, I think that this is a very limiting palette. Much like this one that is also very limiting, you're only going to get blue eye looks out of this. This is only going to give you brown eye looks. There's nothing, and the only shadow that really you could use on your lid if you're looking for like an impactful shimmer on your lid is this one shimmer here. So it's a very, very limited palette, and that would be the reason why you couldn't keep it as your one and done. So a $55 palette, 6 shadows, and it can't be your only one because there's not enough variation in here unless you want to wear these shadows every single day. And like I said, the shadows, the satins in this palette are just way too frosty to be anything other than a satin. You can't even get variance by using the satins as mattes in an eye look because they're just so frosty. If you put them in your crease, you absolutely can put them in your crease, but there's in my humble opinion, just a slight bit too much frostiness to it. And y'all know, if you've been around for a while, I use a satin as matte all the time. But when I put this shadow in my eye look as a matte, I was like, oh wow, I kind of look like a disco ball exploded on my eyeballs because it's just so shiny. I did find that the wear time of these shadows was really decently good. I think probably around 8 hours. I do think that they function, whether they have a primer underneath them or not, really well, both in performance, so longevity time frame, but also in how the process is to put them on. Like I said, these blended onto my eyes like magic. There was not a whole lot of effort I had to put into making a beautiful eye look happen with these shadows. So I'm going to swatch them for you right now. I'm going to swatch this first row and this second row, just going down like that. I really did enjoy playing with this palette. Some of the other palettes that are in his line do have more mattes in them, so I would think about purchasing some of the other color stories. But I just think that if you are the kind of person who needs matte and needs a shimmer in your eye look, and you don't have, not many of us don't have another palette, but if you don't want to pick up more than one of these, then this probably isn't a great palette of choice. But I do think that this is a great palette for aging eyes, because it just takes no effort and it goes on and it doesn't exacerbate texture. Not even the shimmer exacerbated texture. It just fell out all over the place and drove me nuts. The satins didn't even exacerbate texture. It's just a beautiful formula. I mean, that's all I really can say about it. So the first shade in that palette is this one, and it is a really kind of a beigey tone satin that actually leans more like on the shimmer end, in my humble opinion, but shiny shimmer, not like glittery shimmer. Then we have this one here, which is a soft bronze satin. Then we have the black, which I hope you can see is just so stark, so black. That is quite possibly the best black in my collection. Then we have this one, which is a rosy brown satin. This one worked really well as a blush, and that's the one thing I appreciate about the size of these pans, is that you can use these as other, you know, aspects of your makeup routine. Bronzer, blush, all those things can be accomplished with this palette. So it's versatile in that way for sure. Then we have this one, which is a brown matte, and this one I also used as a bronzer in my makeup routine, and I thought it was a beautiful bronzer. Then we have the shimmer, which I think is gorgeous, and I think that you guys will also think is gorgeous. It looks very wet on the skin, more of like a wet appearance than anything else. It reminds me a little bit of the Fenty Diamond Dust formulation, only maybe just a smidge bit better, but it definitely fell out all over my face. I didn't love it in application. I didn't love it in wear time because of the fallout, but that is the only one in this collection, in this palette, that fell out all over my face. Do I think that this palette is worth $55? Again, I've said this before, it's kind of subjective. It's about what you want and what you deem worth it, in your opinion. I am happy to have it. I got it in a Beautylish Lucky Bag. The one thing that I hate about this palette is it's got a really nice clasp on it, and I love that for travel purposes, but it is probably the most difficult palette to open. That clasp is so strong. It's just so difficult to open. I'm just like, I just want in. With that said, I stuck my fingernail in a couple of the shades because it's just so difficult to open. I wish it was just a little bit easier to open, especially considering the fact that this is really great for, like I said, maturing skin. I feel like this formula is the perfect formula for mature eyes, and with mature eyes comes other problems like dexterity problems, and with this palette being as hard as it is to open, Like, that doesn't lend to its usefulness. Now, granted, I know that Wayne Goss maybe wasn't like, I'm going to make this palette and I'm going to make it specifically for aging eyes or aging skin. It's going to look beautiful no matter what on aging skin. And I'm also going to make it, you know, the hardest thing to open on purpose. That just seems silly. But I think in any case, it shouldn't be that hard to open an eyeshadow palette. With that said, I will hold on to this palette. I did enjoy working with it so much. I can see this not being a long-lasting venture in my collection just because it does have more satins than anything else, and I can't really use these satins as anything other than a shimmer. So when I look at the palette, I'm like, there's one shimmer I can't use, and then after that there's only, you know, 2 mattes. One of them's black, so I can't use a black all over in my crease and everywhere else. I mean, I could. I can do what I want. You can do what you want with makeup. But I find that this isn't the most versatile palette in my collection. So I don't know how long it's going to last, but I am holding on to it for now. The formula is beautiful, and above all else, that is why I would keep it. The last palette I have is this one, and this is the Tarte Make Believe in Yourself palette. This is so old in my collection. This was a $40 palette originally. I was able to find it on Amazon, but it was literally 68 bucks. This has a 4.1 star rating on Amazon with 108 reviews on it, and it has 0.48 ounces of product in it. It launched in 2017 as part of the Make Believe in Yourself collection in March of 2017, and I cannot give you a breakdown per pan because there is a giant highlighter pan in the middle. So this is technically a face and eye palette because this is supposed to be a highlighter. So this does have 10 shadows and 1 highlighter in it, and one of these shadows, this one here, is the matte shadow, and everything else in this palette is a shimmer. And all of these shimmers in this palette are so creamy and so smooth, and I was shocked because I did pick this up in 2017. It was one of the first things that I ever brought into my makeup collection, if I remember correctly. Maybe I didn't pick this up in 2017, but either way, it wasn't long after it was launched that I picked this up. So it is old. It is old in my collection. It's got a 12-month shelf life, and these shadows still feel as beautiful as they did the day I brought them into my collection. As a matter of fact, maybe even better than the day I brought them in my collection, or maybe I just didn't appreciate the feel of the shadow as much as I do today, whatever. They are so nice. They're super smooth, super creamy. They're a bit on the denser side, so if you're not careful, they could exacerbate texture on your eyes, but it truly does not take very much to get any kind of impact or beauty on your lid space that you might want. I would say that this is lacking a brow bone shade unless you want to use this one always, but this kind of leans kind of like a pinky gold, like almost a rose gold, so sometimes it's not the best, so you have to use like maybe your highlighter or whatever. That's what I have going on in my brow bone and my inner corner today because I got bored of that highlighter. That highlighter is also very powdery. Of all the shadows or all the shades in here, that highlighter actually has a little bit of a powdery kick to it. But even though it's a little bit powdery and on the thin side, it's not chalky or dusty. There is no fallout to speak of with this palette. I didn't experience any fallout whatsoever with it. And these shadows really did blend so well. Like, they played well with each other. They played well with other shadows. I mean, even other shimmer shadows, they just played really nicely with each other, and I was actually kind of shocked. I don't know why I haven't really picked up this eyeshadow palette. I think that it's beautiful, if I'm honest. Every look, I shouldn't say every look because I was trying to partner it with other palettes and not every look came out awesome. As a matter of fact, I think there's 2 looks that you'll see with incomplete eye looks, And I was happy with the shadow on my lid. I was not happy with the overall presentation of the eye look. Not because of the fault of this guy. As a matter of fact, I think it was the fault of the eyeshadow primer that I was using. And I think that you guys just saw my Shop My Stash, and I actually decluttered that eyeshadow primer because it was a pain in my ass. And then I remembered, oh, this has been a pain in my ass in the past. So I think it was the fault of the eyeshadow primer with those two eye looks that I am going to show you that weren't complete. These worked super well though. I mean, they're so pretty. I would say that these are best over a primer that is a good primer for longevity. They last a bit longer if you utilize a primer that is a primer that's going to work for you. When I think of primers that work for me, it was like the Ulta Beauty Matte Eyeshadow Primer, or even like my Bobbi Brown eyeshadow sticks. It worked well over that. That's what's underneath all this today. It did not require a tacky base because these shimmers went absolutely nowhere. There was no movement on my eye look. There was no fallout all over the place, neither on application nor throughout the day. So I was really happy to utilize this palette for those reasons, but also this worked really well on bare skin also. I'm just shocked with myself on why I haven't pulled this out. Like, Tarte has one of those like matte formulas that I find to be like a staple matte formula. Like, do anything, like, it's such an easy blendable formula. And I think maybe I just forgot that their shimmers are the same. Like, I'm really pleasantly pleased with what I was able to get out of these palettes this week. And I do think I have a few more pictures for you than usual for number one, because today is, you know, Tuesday and the video goes up tomorrow, and I've done, you know, eye looks every day. But also because there are 3 eyeshadow palettes, I really did try and take pictures of the looks that I was able to create that were awesome, as well as the looks that I was able to create that were maybe incomplete because I was pissed off at the look entirely. So let's do some swatches. My phone rang. I had to jump off and take a phone call. So I am going to swatch these, and we are going to start with the highlighter in the middle. This is the highlighter. You can see it has, look at that black, it kind of stained my hand. Called Believe. It is a highlight. It has kind of a white, pink, gold shiftiness to it. It does kind of have a little bit of a gray undertone to it. And in my humble opinion, I do not think that this is a great highlighter. I feel like on my face it emphasized texture, whereas I didn't see that in the eye looks that I used it. As a matter of fact, it's in my eye look today. I didn't see that in the highlighter when I used it as an eyeshadow. It also just shifted in a way that it didn't look super great on the cheeks. So I didn't use this much as a highlighter. I think I only used it once or twice as a highlighter. And then I decided that that just wasn't for me. It wasn't how I was going to roll. And then we have this shade here, which is the one and only matte in the palette. And I think that you can see that it's just, it's not got a lot of, I mean, it's pigmented, but it's not got a lot of color to it. It's just a matte kind of rosy tone brown. It does lean a little bit more warm toned than it should to be the only shade that is a matte in this palette. I would have loved maybe a bone colored shade, or like a beige or something that would work well as like a brow bone shade or a setting shade, more than I love this. It just didn't go with every single one of the shimmers in this palette. And if you're going to put a matte shadow in the palette that has any kind of pigmentation to it that can sway an eye look and what it looks like, I think it needs to be something that's going to go with every single one of the shades in here, and this one didn't. It does blend very nicely. There is zero patchiness to it. It performed very, very well. No voiding, no anything. And there wasn't really any fading with this shadow, even at that, you know, 10 or 12 hour marker. But it's just not, it's too pink for many of the pairings in the palette and too brown for many of the other pairings in the palette, if that makes any sense. Then we have this shade here, It's called Magic, and it is a deep bronze. Then we have Wings, which is a copper penny shade, and this one I think worked best with your fingers versus a brush. And then we have Marvel, which I am actually going to put over here. This is a really, really beautiful, like, green tone gold, kind of like a chartreusey green gold. This one does not build very well. Just make sure that you get everything that you need out of the shadow in one fill swoop, because once you start building it, it does actually lend to texture on your eyelid. Okay, the next one is called Trance. Trance is a kind of a medium taupe. Very, very impactful in an eye look. Very beautiful and shiny and just brilliant and beautiful. It was one of my favorite shades in this palette, and I usually do not lean towards a taupe, but this is a really just a gorgeous, gorgeous shadow. Then we have this one, which is called Fairy. This one is in my eye looks today. It is a kind of a cool tone grungy purple shade. Then we have Mystic, which is a sagey silver. The website, well, the Amazon website claimed this to be a silver. I claim it to be more of a like sagey green, but it looks almost like steel blue in the palette. I think it looks more like almost sagey green in person, but it does have a little bit of a steely blue color to it also. So I can see where somebody would think it was a blue. I'm not sure about a silver though. Then we have this one here, which is called Dream, and it's like a denim light blue shade. And truth be told, I'm getting this palette all over myself. Okay, the next one is this one, which is called Crystal, and it is a cooler mauve tone with a little bit of a golden shift to it. This looked really warm with that matte, but it also looked really, really cool with like the black that came from the Wing Goss palette. So this one is a really nice shadow that has a little bit of a variant to it, because I think it could go with just about any eye look you want to pair it into. And then the last shade we have is this one here, and it is called Pixie. And Pixie is kind of like a pinky coral gold duochrome almost, I feel like, but it's not labeled as a duochrome. So I'm not really 100% certain on whether this is a duochrome, but it kind of feels duochromy to me. Like when I think about some of the pictures that you see on Instagram of like those swatches that go from like orange to coral to pink to gold, like that is what this shadow does for me. And not only this swatch in person as I'm looking in the mirror, but also on an eye look. It is probably the prettiest of all the colors in here. The most universal, because it kind of went with everything. And the easiest one truly to use. It just went on so well. Like there was no packing, no finessing, no finicky nature of that shadow in particular. So while I walked into this palette, Roulette, thinking that this palette was probably going to go because it's old, and I really thought that the shimmers weren't going to perform, I'm surprised by this palette. I will be keeping this palette also. So with that said, we have the Tarte Make Believe in Yourself palette. That one's not available anymore unless you go to Amazon and want to pay $68 for it. You might be able to find it on a resale website like Poshmark or Mercari or something like that. It is worth the money. I would definitely pick it up if I were you. Not for $68, but this is a palette that I would suggest is definitely worth it. This palette also, and any of the like, I'm sure, are also worth it. I think that this formula is so beautiful, and I would recommend it over and over and over again every single time. I did not love the shimmer in this palette. I found that it fell out all over the place, and it was more glittery than I prefer, but if you're into a glitter shadow, you probably will love it. I also don't like the Fenty Diamond Dust highlights. That reminds me of that. So if you love that, you'll love this. I didn't love that this had 3 satins in it that perform more like shimmers, and I couldn't really use them as matte in my eyeshadow palette, or in my eye looks. But those are beautiful shadows all around. This one, I also was super surprised by. What I'm more surprised by, I think, is the cost of it. $23, I think, is pretty expensive for an indie brand, I guess, if you will. But I get it because it is an indie brand, so there's that. I think it's a little bit expensive. Hands down, would not pay $23 for this quad. But I'm happy I have it in my collection. It was a gift to me from my aunt. I'm really glad to have it. That navy blue kind of blew me away, so I will be keeping all 3 of those palettes in my collection for now. I'm going to go pick my new palette. I will be right back. Okay, the next palette I'm picking is a palette that I just brought into my collection. I'm really excited to try it because I've heard amazing things about it, and already the component is pretty crazy. But I'm going to be doing the Patrick Ta Major Dimension 2 palette. I'm really excited to use this. I've heard really great things about it from many a YouTuber out there. This is what it looks like. I do foresee me potentially needing color added to my life during this time, but I will just utilize some of my single shadows if that becomes the case. I really want to see how I feel about this palette. So that is the palette that I will be coming to you next week to have a conversation about, and I'm hoping that you're here for it. I hope that you love this video, and I hope that you give it a big thumbs up if you do. It really does help our channels out here. I also hope, again, that you loved it so very much that you'll want to subscribe before you go. I would love to welcome you into our family here and welcome you personally. So let me know down in the comment section if you do that. I upload content 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I would love to have you along for this crazy ride of mine. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope that you and yours are doing well, that you are healthy, that you're staying safe out there, and that you are living your best life in this crazy world that we're living in right now. I hope that as you're doing that, that you're loving each other, but loving each other from afar. And until next time, bye friends.